Welcome to People Matters by Shiluvah. I am your host, Shiluvah. In today's episode, we'll be discussing talent acquisition for small to medium enterprises. Small to medium enterprises face a unique challenge when it comes to recruiting and retaining talent. With limited resources and visibilities, SMMEs need to get creative and strategic when it comes to their talent acquisition efforts. Our guest today is Bella Ngwenya. Bella, thank you so much for your time and welcome to People Matters. Please tell the peeps a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Thank you, Kulani, for having me. My name is Bella Ngwenya. I am the Managing Director for Pakanyo HR Solutions. We are a HR solutions that specializes in recruitment, learning and development, as well as HR consulting. In terms of a bit about myself, I've been in the HR space for the past 20 years, having occupied different positions in the corporate environment, ranging from training manager. I've also been a recruitment consultant for one of the biggest recruitment agencies in South Africa. And yeah, that's a bit about me. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too, Bella. Me too. Thank you again for making the time. So, just to get us started, I just want to ask you the following question. What do you think are some of the unique challenges that you have faced as a recruiter when you are trying to attract as well as retain talent for SMMEs?
I think for attracting, the biggest challenge is that you're not able to match, salaries
Mm-hmm.
and benefits, for corporate. If you had to make a comparison between corporate and your small, medium enterprises,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of compensation, you're not able to compensate the candidate as well as you would for a corporate organization, and you're not able to provide the benefits that the corporate actually gives.
Mm.
And from the retaining point of view, I think the same reasons would apply,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of you're not able to retain those people. Corporate would actually poach them for much higher salaries than you would offer as a small medium enterprise.
Yeah, I think you've put it so well. We face exactly the same kind of challenges, and I think also it's this elusive search for the so-called perfect candidate, right? I don't know
Yeah.
what your clients say, but they always have this persona and this almost like a list that they want to tick off about what they want, and it's so difficult sometimes to get them to understand that number one, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. They don't exist, unfortunately.
True.
If they did, Bella, you and I would be billionaires by now. Not that we're not going there, but
Indeed.
we're on our way there. But definitely there's
Indeed.
definitely no such thing. So what advice would you give to small to medium enterprise owners that are, wanting to build a team, but also understand to a certain degree the challenges that they are having to come against? They don't have the notoriety, right? They don't have the budget. They don't have the benefit schemes that these corporates can that they leverage off of. So what advice would you give them?
I think, for small, medium enterprises, I would give the same advice that I would give to your corporate organization.
Mm,
It's important first for an organization to define what their culture is, what are their vision, what are their values, right?
mm-hmm,
And once that is done, they have to obviously come up with the objectives and the goals. They must put together a job description for this person that they want
mm-hmm,
to recruit. They need to obviously put systems in place in terms of managing performance for the individual that they want on board. But also, I think what is very key is to also keep in mind that whoever that you get to recruit or bring on board needs to wear multiple hats. You
mm,
mentioned that you would look for a perfect candidate. It does not exist.
Yeah.
So for a small medium enterprise, you have to look for someone who's actually going to multitask and do a multiple task for you as a business. So where as opposed to a corporate entity, they would look, for example, let's say an HR manager who would
Mm-hmm.
only focus on in HR,
Yeah.
whereas in a small medium enterprise organization, that person is actually going to wear a lot of hats. So
Mm.
those are the things that SMMEs need to also keep in mind that whoever that you get to bring on board needs to have, those multiple skills. But also, as much as you are a small business, it's important that you streamline your recruitment processes and you make sure that, there is a structure to it, starting from putting together proper questions
Mm-hmm.
during the interview process. It's important that you do that. You have to score your candidates,
Yeah.
and obviously whoever that you get to bring on board, it's got to be someone obviously that meets the requirements that you as an entrepreneur or as a person in charge would have put in place. And those are the things that you need to put in place. Over and above that, you also have to think about, how am I going to evaluate the performance of the person that I'm bringing on board, and
Yes.
tracking mechanisms that I'm going to put in place in order to make sure that there is a great benefit, a return on investment that you're about to make. So
Yeah.
in a nutshell, those are the things that I think business owners need to actually take into account, or that's the advice rather that I would give to the business owners.
Mm, mm. I agree with you 100%. Another piece of advice, just to be spicy, I would say also be nice to your recruiter.
Most definitely, most definitely.
Yeah,
Be, because they are the link between you and they are the person who can actually go find you this gem that
mm,
you're looking for. Is something that you, as we correctly said when we started, that does not exist.
yeah,
So
yeah,
those would be the people who would go find you this gem that almost is non-existent.
yeah.
And in some instances, we would create it for you as recruiters, because we sort of are able to see potential in in places or in instances where most people wouldn't be able to.
100%. And I think for me, this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as well. And I'm sure you guys face as well, is where we will have this job spec and we'll probably have a persona of the person that we're wanting to bring into the organization. But the business owner is so stuck on getting that perfect candidate that they're not
Yeah,
willing to sort of like listen to the recruiter or just even take an eye, place an eye on a candidate that they feels like, no, they don't meet the spectrum. And the recruiter will always say, let's have a conversation with the person, let's see how that goes. And I
yeah,
found that the clients that are willing to have the conversation with the so-called non-perfect candidates in their eyes ends up being some of the best investment that they have made.
indeed.
Yeah, whereas if you are just wanting to sort of like throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the saying goes,
Hmm.
then you become complacent and you're like, I don't know, you've probably heard this before, especially of small business owners. We're trying to create jobs, but people don't want jobs. And when you hire them, then it's as if like they're doing you a favor, etc., etc., etc.
True,
You
true.
laugh
And
because,
and also,
yeah.
yeah, it happens quite a lot. And I think even as a business, we've experienced it, the
Mhm.
frustration around that. But going back to your question to say, um, as business owners, need to also be conscious about the fact that we need to emphasize that there is no perfect candidate.
Mm.
And in most cases, we've got to, I think the business owners must be empowered enough to be able to have that eye that actually is able to pick up on potential, you know,
Yeah.
and and once you I think also the defining of that culture, what is your organizational culture, what is your
Mm.
what are your values, and during the recruitment process, you sort of look out for those things to say, can this person actually live our values,
Yeah.
can they actually help in terms of driving this vision that we have for our organization. So they've got to have that talent and the eye to be able to pick up that, what, this person actually has a potential, to take us to where we need to as an organization.
100%. And I think for me, especially for SMMEs, I always, say that, when it comes to the talent pool, you need to leverage your disadvantages, right? You understand what your disadvantages are. They're as clear as day, right? And as
Hmm.
SMMEs, you're also, generally speaking, and this is a gross generalization because not all businesses are at the same level, but you're essentially looking for somebody who's going to come into the business and hit the ground running. SMMEs,
Yeah,
unfortunately, don't have the capacity or the appetite to train, right? Unless they get to a certain point, or maybe they've grown enough to a point where they can actually start accommodating training and sort of like developing people. So it's that understanding that values, understanding your shortcomings becomes the winning ticket to ensure that you bring the right people into your organization. And I always say to our particular clients, you have two options. You can either hire the person that is retiring from corporate, has
yeah.
made their corporate money, and now they want to do something just to keep them busy, in their old age.
Yeah,
They don't want to
yeah,
necessarily go into retirement. And that kind of person is probably perfect because they're coming with a wealth of knowledge, expertise, etc., etc. Or you can bring in somebody that does not have that experience. Maybe is a fresh graduate, maybe somebody who has 1 or 2 years of experience, and you can literally
yeah,
walk the journey to a certain degree with that person. But I always say, the person that you start out with, they're going to be poached by, you're going to cook them, and then when they're ready to
yeah.
perform, they're going to get poached by the big guys because they have the
Yes,
notoriety and the budget, etc., etc. So you need to balance between those particular nuances. And sometimes, clients will be like, yeah, we get it. And then others are like, no, but I want a sweet middle. I don't know if that really exists. Do you think that sweet middle exists, Bella?
look, at a price, of course,
Mhm.
it is there, but
Yeah,
at a price. So
yeah.
you've got to be prepared to pay a little bit more for that sweet middle. It does exist. I totally agree, but you've got to pay a little more. But also, and you find that, the issue around paying big salaries is a huge challenge for entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and or small medium enterprises. So my advice is always, look, you're not going to be a startup forever. There
Mm,
will be a time where you get to grow. So you've got to play your part or earn your stripe as a startup.
yeah.
And that is living the reality of, I am gonna train someone, and yes, big companies are gonna take them. And when that happens, it means that it is time for others to come in, and for those to leave you. And
Yeah.
that is the reality of life, I guess, if I can put it like that. So we've got to accept that that is actually going to happen. And
Mm,
I mention a lot around potential,
yeah.
to say that look for that potential, but also part of the recruitment process is that you need to put systems in place, and things like your proper onboarding,
Mm-hmm.
um, training programs for your people, in terms of capacitating them on how you want them to be. So you've got to almost create your version of
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah.
So if you want them to be able to do this, you've got to train them to be able to do that. But again, there are a lot of benefits. A lot of people would say, no, but we train and then they poach them.
Yeah.
People, I find that, and it's a hasty generalization. Let me put it like out there, to
Yeah.
say people do enjoy working for small companies,
They do.
because they are seen in those small companies as opposed to working for a corporate company
Mm-hmm.
where you're not seen. You're just a number.
Yeah.
So within the smaller organization, there's a really a great scope for you to really grow and
Mm-hmm.
empower yourself. And there's an opportunity for you to wear those many hats within the organization, which I think in terms of where the world is going, the world is looking for people who are multi-skilled and not,
Yes.
someone with just one skill.
Yeah.
Where the world is headed, we need people who can do lots of things, who are empowered and skilled in different areas within the work environment. So a small business actually does offer that opportunities, and the honors are on the owners to be able to sell that idea, to say, look, if you come on
Mm.
board, these are the opportunities that are available for you, and make that out there, and use that as a selling point. And people love, especially those who are in the entry level, they love being trained,
Oh,
because they're fresh
yes.
from school, and they're
Yeah.
hungry for those experiences, and they want to be trained. So I think as small businesses, they need to use that as a way, as a selling tool, to say empowerment is something that we thrive on. You are going to get trained, you will have an opportunity, to grow faster, as
Yeah.
opposed to a corporate environment. So personally, I mean, over the past couple of years before I left corporate,
Mm-hmm.
it's things that I loved working for smaller organizations, because
Yeah.
you are recognized as a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And especially when you spoke about how where the world is going now, because the world of work is a forever changing um thing, right? I can't think of a better word
Yeah.
right now. And
Yes.
multi-skilled, transferable skills are probably the biggest assets that you could have as an individual, to bring into the SMME space, or any space, to be completely
Yeah.
frank, because that's
Yeah.
that's what people are looking for. That's what small businesses owners are looking for. That's what corporate leaders are looking for as well. So,
Yeah.
as a piece of advice for people who are in the job market, and you're thinking to yourself, how do I make myself a little bit more attractive? Be multi-skilled. Use your transferable skills to your advantage as well. But Bella, I want to move on and talk a little bit about the SMME client, right? And I want you just to take a moment and maybe share with us a success story you've had with some of your smaller clients, in terms of how you followed the recruitment process and you found the best candidate, not the perfect candidate, but the best candidate for the role, and how that person coming into the organization and the business, and the impact that it had on that particular business.
Look, I think with this one particular client, I was very lucky, because the role that I was playing in that organization, I served more as an HR manager, because I did mention earlier on that we are an HR consulting. We
Mm-hmm.
do HR consulting. So I was very fortunate that I was doing the recruiting,
Yeah.
and the HR element to it in that business.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the process that we follow, would advertise the position, and on different job portals.
Mm-hmm.
And what we would then do from there, we would then shortlist, and shortlist three possible candidates that meet the requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would then put together a list of questions based on the job description, to check basically on the competency of the candidate, and obviously the suitability of that candidate. And then from there, I would be the first person that interviews. And then once I'm happy, I then forward to the business owner to
Mm-hmm.
obviously interview. I would give them interview packs, to say, these are the interview packs. You need to evaluate these candidates. Because
Mm.
one thing that I always, advise business owners against, is to hire individual based on their looks, or how they
Yes.
speak or how well they speak.
Yes.
There's
Oh,
a mistake
big
that
mistake.
they would, yeah, they want to hire based on how good their English sounded in the interview, and
Mm-hmm.
they forget about, things that are important, whether the person is competent or not, whether, are they the right fit for the organization. So they overlook all of that, but they would recruit based on what they're seeing, the
Mm-hmm.
looks and how the person. So what I've always insisted on with business owners is that let's stick to the script. We have a process, and the process is that these are the list of questions that the candidate needs to answer. We need to score those candidates, and whoever gets the highest score obviously is the person that gets considered for the for the position. Then
Yeah.
from there, so it's either the first, second interview. I would facilitate that whole process, but at the end of the day, the client is the one that decides in terms of who needs to come on board or who they feel is suitable for their organization. And then once they've appointed, I would assist in terms of putting together an onboarding process,
Mm-hmm.
onboard the new candidate obviously, or the new employee, and then the process begins. um, Obviously some of the elements, they were taken care of by the client, but those that I was responsible for and were in my scope, I would obviously facilitate that process. And then would obviously check in after a month and 3 months to check, how happy is the candidate, how
Mm-hmm.
happy is the client with regards to their new recruit. So, and then from there, the client takes over in terms of that client experience. But I was, with a particular client, I was always available in terms of helping them put together HR systems in place that can actually help in terms of creating great experiences for the candidates or the new employees that they've brought on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
I
in a
agree.
nutshell, that has been that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And in your experience, Bella, what are some of the key qualities or traits that you would advise a business owner to look for when hiring new team members?
I did mention a lot on potential.
Yeah.
Be able to identify that. So
Mm,
look, if someone with 2 years and more experience might come in a little bit more expensive than someone who's got a year's experience, if I can
yeah.
put it like that. So look at that. And what I would also advise is that, test the employees or the potential candidates' skill.
Mm,
Look around. So if someone, say, for example, say that they have done telesales, put that
mm,
into a test. Just test them and see whether have they really done that. Do some sort of role play and check if they've actually said that they've actually, they've done telesales. If they're
mm,
saying they're computer literate, put together, some assessments. They're available on Google. Assess them and check if, is the person really competent in those areas. So those are things that can actually give you that comfort to say you are actually bringing, the right person on board.
yeah. Oh my goodness. I completely agree with you. And for me, another thing is like the testing is so important. It's something that clients don't necessarily take seriously, but the testing, the potential, I think for me, the willingness to learn and be teachable is probably for
Yeah,
me a little bit more important than actual skill that they have or lack thereof, if that makes any sense. Um,
yeah,
and I always, for me, I also look for candidates that can, teach me something as well.
yeah.
I think that's also super important. Bella, when you are recruiting for a client, right? How do you balance the need for an actual skill? Let's say maybe it's a specialized skill um, with a culture fit, right? Because those don't always go hand in hand. unfortunately. Somebody might be extremely skilled, but lack the aptitude to fit into the culture, or they have the aptitude to fit into the culture, but there are a few gaps in that specialized skill.
Look, I think during the recruitment process, sometimes you may have to make an exception and sort of train on those gaps. I always recommend that the learning and development, element becomes the part of the process with regards to how do I put it, the culture fit, if I can put it like that, because I believe that culture is something that you can almost teach someone, right? In terms of those practices.
Yeah.
So if there is a lack in that regard, you can make an exception and sort of train on those, but it shouldn't be that extreme. So let me give you an example. Someone that says, no, I actually don't put in extra effort in things that I do. Obviously, that's a red light. You're not going to go for someone like that.
Yes.
But you want someone that, there's values that you can almost instill and teach, throughout their career life or throughout their journey with your organization. So I recommend that for you to get that balance, it's important that you put processes and training programs in place for you to train on those that you feel there is a gap. Yeah. So for
100%.
me, I think training and development plays a very key role in that regard.
Marabella, they keep telling us that training and development is expensive.
Look, and for maybe I'm very biased in a sense because I'm in that space.
Yeah,
So
me
for me,
too.
it's not it's not something that is very expensive. Look, you
Yeah.
can outsource it and do the trainer and have someone train it internally. It doesn't have to be that expensive. You could get a Kulani to develop a learning material. You train the director on how to actually deliver it, and then they deliver it for the employees where they feel that there is a gap. And so those are some of the things that entrepreneurs or business owners need to have. Those are some of the skills you need to be able to train your staff, unfortunately, because if you don't have the budget for training, those are the things that you need to explore. But you cannot lose out on a good candidate because they don't know certain things. I believe that
100%.
you those are trainable things, or elements, if I can put it like that. You can actually grow a person in those areas. You don't have to necessarily lose out on that particular talent just because you feel that they're not aligning.
100%. 100%. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. All right. And the what last thing that I want to discuss is we talked a little bit earlier about how recruitment for SMMEs is very tricky because obviously budget, brand notability, and all those things are not playing to their favor. But um, how would you advise clients to use the little budget that they have, the little brand awareness and brand notoriety that they have within the market to attract the best talent possible for their organization?
Look, social media is one of the platforms that business owners can use in terms of advertising for candidates and or recruit, advertising and obviously starting off that whole process. And you could also get referrals for ask people in the space to help you find the candidates. And there's always WhatsApp groups of all sorts. You
Yeah.
find recruiters WhatsApp groups, you find in all platforms. You find that on your Twitter, you find that on your Facebook, and all sorts of WhatsApp places. Those are the avenues that you could go. The other tool that I always recommend also for small businesses is Indeed. They
Yeah.
do have a free portal where you can actually advertise.
Yeah.
But what is also very key, that one of this, you need to obviously go. You can do recruiting yourself, if you don't have the budget for the recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the platforms that I would recommend for your SMME to go to. But now what you must also remember is that it's a very tedious process for
Extremely.
a business owner to go through. Um, you know, some people think that being a recruiter is a walk in a park. It's actually quite tedious, because
I
for every
know.
application that you put out there, you get 2,000 applications. So now you need to note that if you had to go through that process yourself as a business owner, you've got to go look for the right person, you
Mm.
know and that can be actually very difficult if you don't have the skill and the knowledge of how to do it. So those are the things that you need to be aware of. And although there are free platforms for you to be able to do that, but you've got to have the time and the energy to do that. And also note that that will actually remove you from your focus, which is your
Yes.
business. So that is the only disadvantage around that. But yeah, as a small business, those are the avenues that you could explore. But also, I find that, small, medium, and, recruiters that are focusing on SMME,
Mm-hmm.
they are very open in terms of negotiating, for rates and things like that.
Yes.
Just help into that space where you can negotiate the rates, and obviously remain a loyal client to that. There's always room to negotiate and discuss the terms and conditions, that can suit your organization. So I think those are the two things that small, medium enterprises can look into in terms of, especially when they are budget tight.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. And also, yes, there are rates can be negotiated, but also barter. One of the best things I've
Ye-
ever got, the best relationship I've gotten into from a bartering perspective is me and my accountant, right? So
Yes.
her and I barter um, apple for apple on terms of our in
Yeah.
terms of our services. I maintain a good sort of like financial standing in the sense that everything that I need from an accountancy perspective is amazing.
Yeah.
I never have to fight with SARS, and she never has to fight with the Department of Labor or any of her employees because
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
is is in place, right? And it frees both
Yeah.
our time, because those two things, as a small business owners, those two things can be extremely time consuming, that actually can take you
It
away
is.
from your business as well. So barter, find yourself a recruiter, a small recruiting firm that you can barter services with, that you can negotiate. But again, please be nice to your recruiter, guys.
Mm.
We are going through 2,000 applications, and then
Yeah.
and then you don't read the CVs that you send us, and you're like, no, but nobody meets. It's like, I sent you 5 CVs 5 minutes ago,
Yeah.
and you've replied already to tell me that nobody meets your requirements. How is that even
Yes.
possible? So just be nice
Yeah.
to your recruiter. Yeah. Bella,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Should people be looking for you, your organization, and your services, where and how can they find you?
We are on all social media platforms as Pacanyo HR. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're also on LinkedIn as Pacanyo HR. They can also reach us on our website, which is www.pacanyo.co.za, and also on email, which is info@pacanyo.co.za.
Alrighty, you heard for yourself. If nothing else, I've plugged you with a recruiter that will be able to service you the best in the business. So once again, Bella, thank you so much for your time. We really, really do appreciate it. It's been a great, great conversation. To all the listeners out there, until next time, thank you and chat soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.